far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment, it's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your destiny. 100 women growing strong. 100 women where you belong. You stood tall and now you see, you have reached your destiny. Woman, woman.
As people of African descent, we offer this land recognition in solidarity with the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island in the efforts and deliberate intentions toward decolonization. As people of African descent, we acknowledge the land of Turtle Island that sustains us, express deep gratitude to its indigenous peoples, and pledge to honor our dignity and divinity that ultimately connects us all. By Kay Johnson. Welcome to 100 ABC Fireside Chats. 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women is a bold project initiated by co-authors and co-founders, the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, Dr. Denise O'Neill Green, and Donna Jones Simmons. Our mission is to celebrate and archive the professional accomplishments of trailblazing Black women from all across Canada. The goal is to create an ever-expanding database available for current and future generations via print media, public and private libraries, as well as our website, which is www.100abcwomen.ca. In addition to our fireside chats on topics that matter to our communities, such as education, healthcare, entertainment, creative arts, trade union, and so much more, we offer biennial book launching galas and biannual symposiums. The co-authors and co-founders would like to take this opportunity to thank each of you for attending today's fireside chat. We know that you will find these sessions educational and inspirational. So sit back, relax, and hear from our brilliant and talented honorees.
Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. It's my absolute honor and privilege to welcome you to the 5th 100 ABC Woman Fireside Chat. And today, our theme will be becoming indispensable to your school system. We hope you'll be engaged and you'll walk away with at least knowing one thing you didn't know before, and you'll be more empowered to be engaged with the school system. I'd also like to welcome everybody to and acknowledge that this February is Black History Month, and it's all about celebrating Canadian Black history. And 100 ABC Women focuses on Black females. Our very own Dr. Jean Augustine in December 1995 introduced a motion which was unanimously adopted by the House of Commons, and it recognized February as Black History Month in Canada. And I'd like to open with a quote before I introduce our esteemed panel. And this quote is from parentandteen.com. When teachers and families partner together to support student achievement, students earn higher grades, attend school more regularly, and enroll in higher level courses. This collaboration also fosters more motivated students. Young people maintained higher education aims and lower rates of dropout. Students with involved parents have a better attendance, complete more homework, and have higher enrollment in educational opportunities after high school. Parents can participate at school by helping with functions and activities or communicating with teachers. They can also be involved at home in many ways, including guiding their children to manage homework and other commitments and engaging in discussions about values, attitudes regarding education. And with that, I'd like to welcome the first panelist to our Fireside Chat. Michelle Monroe is a visionary advocate and a passionate and instrumental uplifter for people of African descent and the Black community. Michelle is an innovative community developer and thought leader who has worked with and within the community development and education sector. She is the creator of the City of Toronto's first youth cabinet, the creator of the city's first crisis response unit, and while working in one of the world's largest sectors, the Toronto District School Board, she established Girls Talk, a young woman's journey leadership program. She also created the first parent and community engagement office and the Families Talking Race Learning series, all of which continues to impact and transform the lives of children, youth, and families. Michelle's excellent work has been acknowledged by many organizations, including the JCA, the Jamaican Canadian Association Young Professionals, who honored her with the Young Professional Community Service Award. So welcome, Michelle. It's truly an honor to have you here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Kathy. I am humbled and honored, as always, to be in the presence of just incredible women of African descent doing outstanding things. And I'm always intrigued when I hear myself being introduced. So thank you.
And thank you for being with us today. So you have the honor of getting the first question, which is, right. What does it mean to be indispensable in the context of education?
So many who know me know that I work with the Toronto District School Board, and I've been there for some time. And there are 4 words that comes to me with this question. The first is aware, that we need to be aware of 3 things. 1, what education is and what it needs to be. 2, who owns it? Now that may sound strange to folks, but who owns education? And 3, where is education moving and going? So I know I have a few minutes, so let me speak to the what for a minute. We know that as a community, we've been battling to ensure that education just doesn't become a storing house for our children or places that do harm to our children. And that we continue to endeavor to work that it's places that unearth joy for our children. But because of the nature of the work I do, not just unearth joy for our children, but also unearth joy for us as the parents and caregivers who are constantly advocating for our children. And who owns it? Let us not be confused. There are various stakeholders that are invisible in education that continues to determine the direction of education. What curriculum gets presented in the classroom? Who's drafting it? Who's setting the direction for it? What is the content of it? How does it go from a drafting room, a curriculum somewhere, into policy, down into our classrooms being taught? Who owns it? It is owned What are the voices that are driving who gets hired, how many gets hired, what drives the funding sources? That's a part of who owns it, but also it's a part of the direction of where we're moving, right? I always like to context our talk within the spaces that we're in right now. If we're looking at the multiple driving forces that are having an impact on education, we recognize that a lot of the driving forces are external. They always have been, but now it is so now pronounced in education that we need to figure out where education is going. Are we moving into a technical kind of space of learning, right? We're seeing all kinds of institutions now that are being designed for the purpose of virtual education and virtual learning. We're seeing new policies that are coming down the pike that are actually now literally stating, I'm not sure if many of our audience is aware, but there's a policy that's on the route in Ontario that's strictly talking about students will be able to not have to go all the way to grade 12 to graduate. They may be able to take an option where they don't have to do their last year, but they can engage in some other options. Now, that's another interesting talk, but it speaks to where education is moving. And for us to be indispensable, we need to be aware of it. But secondly, now we have to position ourselves, right? We as parents and caregivers and the community, we need to position ourselves and continue to do so to be able to have an impact on the what is being taught, on the who owns it, and framing the direction of it. So what that means is we've got to now prepare ourselves, right? There's some knowledge about education that we've got to keep digging deep dive into. And I say that all the time. And the deep dive for me more is not just what's happening at our school level, but what's happening at the district level, what's happening at the provincial level. Many of us as parents and caregivers and community that's engaged in education, we're very local, which is not a bad thing. I just think we need to start escalating our engagement at those levels to get a clear understanding as to why is it that the content that's in my child's classroom is in my child's classroom? How is it that the funding that my school receives, why is my school getting that funding? How was it determined? And at the secondary level, why is it that my program got that funding? Or how is it that that program got funding over another program at a secondary school? So that's the kind of preparation that'll enable us to become dispensable. And once we've covered those three things, then to be indispensable, we must and we have to engage. And I'll leave it at that, Kathy.
Oh, thank you. Wow, that was truly amazing. I liked how you mentioned the importance of unearthing joy, as well as what intrigued me as a school board trustee when you mentioned what's happening at the district level. Because I can tell you that many boards, the TDSB has about a $3.4 billion budget, right? I'm from Peel, it's over $2 billion. That's a lot of funding, a lot of money that elected officials are, have to govern, right? And they're responsible for, yet many folks are not aware of who their local trustee is. A lot of folks don't vote for their local trustee, right? A lot of school board meetings are streamed online, live. You can listen to it after. And I think, that resonated with me when you spoke about the district level, not to mention the provincial level. And, I also struck a chord when you spoke about the invisible stakeholders. So how do parents and caregivers of African descent become indispensable as they engage with these invisible stakeholders and others?
So the first real thing for me is parenting. Sounds strange, but true. Mm-hmm. And I said earlier that I wanted to add this piece of parenting because I must apologize to the audience for my absence last week. And so I wanted to drop this piece about parenting. And I'll frame it this way. Audre Lorde described her parenting as a revolutionary act that had the ability to liberate and free not only her own children, but also engage her children as agents of social change. And the challenge I put out to all of us, including myself, is are we parenting our children for liberation? And that's a heavy loaded question, and one that I know I have been sitting with, because we're in an environment all the time as adults and as our children where we are constantly living in a space of surveillance. Our children are surveillance everywhere they move. We are surveillance in our workplace. That defines the type of parents who we are and how we become. And then we become very protective of our children. And then we parent them in that protective manner, which doesn't create the kind of space they need to be joyful and liberated, and therefore enter institutions to be that joyful and liberated. And so I want us to be thinking about, are we doing liberated parent in an intentional way? And are we cultivating resilient and joyful Black children that are doing the healing work to be able to engage in these institutions, but not just become them, but disrupt them? So that's the first piece I think that we do, because when we're raising children like that, when they're sitting in spaces that they don't feel joyful, that they're able to disrupt that, recognizing that the disruption is what's going to make them whole, and that they have the right to be there and the right to be present. And that's really the way we're going to be able to continue that work we do in the education system. The other thing for me is recognize, really, folks, we know racism and anti-Black racism is real, and it's many of us enter the education system thinking it's going to be different. So what that means is we don't enter those spaces equipped with the information, but also with the knowledge of ourselves, of who we are as African people, the journeys that we've been on, and recognize that this is a journey and this is a battle that we've been in and is going to continue. So what I see a lot in my work is a lot of our parents who are in there and become harmed. They let the system or the individuals in there who are creating blockage harm them, and that harm them results in them withdrawing themselves from the space, withdrawing themselves from engaging. And it's such a gentle reminder for us to be indispensable. We've got to be willing and knowing what we're entering into and be prepared to continue the battling in those spaces. Now, I've heard many of our parents, caregivers say to Michelle, why do we have to be the ones always in that battle mode? Why do others get to joy education with joy and peace, and we've got to enter it into the spaces where we do battle? I'm not saying that we've got to enter it to do battle. We've got to enter it remembering who we are as African people and our history and our legacy. So if we enter with that, we know that we're not doing battle. We're just continuing representing who we are in the spaces that we enter in our state as grandeur as people of African descent. And to disrupt something, you've got to understand it and be in it. We cannot disrupt from a distance. Many of us look at education from a distance and we don't meaningfully engage in it. And I need us to meaningfully engage in it at the various levels that I suggested before. And not just at your school level, that you need to know who is our Minister of Education and what's his intent. What is the goal that they hold for education? Who is funding those pieces? What do they hold? And so that kind of engagement enables us to disrupt in a way that our knowledge enables us to take action in ways that are intentional and not random. And I'll leave it at that, Kathy.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And that's the perfect segue for me to introduce Lorna Lobby Cross, and who is a retired principal after 37 years in education. She was working at the TDSB. Currently, Mrs. Lobby Cross uses some of her time to serve as an education advisor and coordinator at Youth Association for Academic Athletics and Character Education, a nonprofit organization housed in the Humber River, Black Creek, Jane and Finch community, committed to minimizing the inequality of opportunity impacting Black children, youth, and family. During the summer of 2023, she was director of this amazing institution. Mrs. Lobby Cross is also currently helping young people to attain their goals. She helps her mentees to set goals, build leadership capacity, expand network, and pursue opportunities. She also believes that having hobbies build character. She said, I grew up in a household with a strong work ethic and a sense of industry. Pastime in the home was productive and leisure. She links her past to my future by drawing on a hobby she developed in childhood. As an artisan, she created a startup, one-of-a-kind business, LLC Dolls. By the way, I owned one, creating in the Greater Toronto area. Each doll is inspired by the individual child's unique character traits, and each doll is created and individualized for the child to whom it is made. So I'd like to welcome her at this time. Welcome, Lorna. And I'd just like to know, Lorna was having technical difficulties with her camera, but we will still engage in and draw on her wonderful knowledge. So Lorna, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. And I have a two-part question for you. So part A of my first question is, why is it important for parents to become indispensable to the school system?
It is really important. I really have tremendous appreciation for many of the things that Michelle said, and that leads me to my conclusion that having parents become indispensable to the school system will only empower students. It is crucial for students to be empowered in a way that they are able to build inner strength, to build confidence, and to be resilient. In face of many of the things that Michelle had said previously, we can see that it is really important that we find a way to, as parents, to support these children. Now, when parents become indispensable to the school system, they are being champions for their children. We need to be champions because you can see all the issues that are occurring in the school system right now. There's a tremendous amount of, and I'm going to say it, there's some tremendous amount of dysfunction in terms of the way our students are treated, in terms of the way our students are managing school, and as a result, the students that we put for out there, we send our best to school. Unfortunately, they do not always get the best, and they do not always give their best. So as parents, it is really important for us to be indispensable, to be champions, to connect with the school system in order to assist in empowering our children to become all that they can be. I've been in many schools, and I started in 1981, and I noticed it is really, I've been to so many schools in the well-established areas in terms of financial establishment. I've been in areas where students are struggling, families are struggling economically, socially. And I've noticed a tremendous difference in terms of how parents manage school systems. So one of the areas I worked in, and that is in the Lawrence Park area, I noticed that parents came out for student council meetings. Parents showed up for activities, students' participation in sports and clubs, etc. We do not see that tremendous amount of outpour of support in areas that we need to have it. So I would say to the parents, show up, turn up for these events, come out to the activities, the games, come out to the parents' council meetings, find out about the policies that Michelle talked about, find out about what's going on in the Ministry of Education, look into what activities your child is doing, being involved as a parent in the school council meeting ends up fostering collaborative relationships between parents, teachers, administration, etc. Sometimes when the schools do not see the views and the values of the parents, they may not be as supportive as they should be because they don't understand exactly what's going on with that child. Sometimes parents can assist in assisting the school to help educate their children and redirect them. I would also say that if possible, you will be able to see, like in high schools, it's hard for parents to come in to see what their children are doing. But in middle schools and in junior schools, primary schools, parents can drop in and volunteer. They will have a picture of what this child's day looks like. And it's important because when the schools call and said, little Junior has said this or done that, parents may not automatically, we do question, and we should question what the school is saying, but looking at, it's really important to get a picture of what the child is doing that day or that particular time, so that we can assist the kid. It's not assisting the school, really. You are assisting your child by coming in and seeing what's going on. Engage in these activities, that, school events, so that you can know how to redirect your child. If possible, volunteer for fundraising activities, for field trips, etc. It is also important, I notice, that parents may not have the time. And again, I'm not trying to be judgmental, because I do understand there's a difference in economic situations with many parents. And parents absolutely have 2, 3, 4 jobs in some areas, whereas parents in other areas have one job and may be able to work from home. So as a result, they may not, some parents in some areas may not be available to go to parent conferences. But if they're not, is it possible to send an advocate? Be there to advocate for your child. Make yourself indispensable and available, so that the school system will see, hey, there's somebody there for this child, and they may not have the confusion, or they may not be able to mess around with practices in terms of how they treat your child. So coming to parents' conferences is important. Many times parents do not get the report. Something happens with the mail, something happens with the child taking the report home, or whatever. It is wonderful when you turn up for the parent-teacher conferences to actually see what your child is doing, hear the teacher's perspective in terms of how the child is interacting in school. You may have a different view. Remember, how your child reacts with you in the home is often completely diametrically opposed to how that child responds in a school situation, in a classroom, or with his or her friends. So sometimes we are in disbelief because we sent little Junior, and this is little Junior at home a particular way, and little Junior is doing something so different that it's hard to believe what the teacher's saying. Right? So I'm not saying the teacher's always right, but when you go to these parent council meetings, you'll hear from a few teachers. And if the information is consistent that little Junior is doing excellently in this particular area, but it needs some building of strengths in another area, then you may want to listen a little bit, right? So support of those parent-teacher conferences, very important. You will get perspectives. A lot of parents may not understand the report card. Here is an opportunity. When you turn up, you understand what the A is, what the B is, C, etc. You will also understand these ideas of self. When you hear, when you get a no, an N on the report, showing that your child does not do well in self-regulation, you will understand. Ask the teacher, what does that mean? And you will see, unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of parents skip over, I don't care. It's not a mark. It's just an N. It's an S. It's a whatever. Understand what that satisfactory means. Understand what that need improvement means. Understand what that good and excellent mean, so that you can see how your child is developing in terms of their social, emotional skills. So self-regulation is something I would definitely ask parents to talk to the school about, so that they understand how to help their child set goals. I am going to say this again. a lot of and I understand because I myself had a black child in the system, and I myself had to reflect on comments that were made about my own child's self-regulation in terms of how to help him improve, how to help him make better choices, how to help him be persevere in the face of challenges. Now, I am a high school educator, so I do understand it a little bit differently from the elementary. And I do know that a lot of our students in the high school, our young Black children in the high school, need a little bit more experience, a little bit more development with self-regulation, so that when somebody says, because we have all these microaggressions, we have macroaggressions that these kids are facing without our support. How do they learn to manage these type of aggressions within the school system? So I would
Thank you for that,
suggest,
Lorna.
I'm sorry?
Now, just saying thank you for that, because that's rose into the question that I want, some of the themes I want to speak with Andre Nicole about.
Right, okay.
So you've raised some very interesting points, and you actually answered my second question. So with that, I'd like to introduce Andre Nicole, the founder and CEO of Andre Nicole Inc., an empowerment organization that equips women, couple, and youth with the tools required to discover, focus on the power to become empowered. So I would ask you, Andrea, I'd like to welcome you and ask you if you can tell the audience a little bit more about your organization before I ask you your first question.
Right. Thank you so much for that introduction. And so much has happened from the information that you're sharing with our community today. I have a few businesses. I registered Conquer Her Mountains Moved during the pandemic. And the reason for that is that I'm also a breast cancer thriver. So I like to see myself as an educator at the intersection of social justice. I have recently been appointed vice principal this January. So there's a lot that's going on. So Andre Nicole Inc. is one of them. I'm a certified life coach practitioner as well, a speaker and author of 8 books, 3 that have not been released that are dealing with, informing those of cancer. However, in terms of education, totally love it. I know that I'm here to serve. It is a gift, and I'm most honored to share this platform with Michelle and Lorna. So, in regards to that organization, the empowering piece is very important in terms of equipping not only youth, but women and couples with the tools, tips, and techniques to navigate through, the trenches or the storms or just daily lives. So it's just giving them any opportunity to delve deep within themselves and to allow them to know that they do have special gifts. And they're the ones who, when I work with them, are able to hone into that. The way that I have transferred that into the actual schools is also just allowing them to see their worth. And when I was listening to both Michelle and Lorna speak in regards to, the different systems and things of that nature, or other words that I heard very loudly as listen, to listen. For me, I believe that building relationships are very important. It's a foundation to many things. And the things that I'm speaking about are the relationships with the parents, the relationships with the students, the relationships with the staff, the relationship with the school community, the system leads, and all of the other individuals that are under the realm of education. The reason as to why I believe that building relationships are important is because for some of the topics of discussion that Michelle and Lorna had mentioned, whether it be in terms of report cards, whether it be in terms of dealing with quote unquote issues of behavior, but in reality, it's because of the fact that the student has to compensate because they don't know how to read or write and are being passed from level to level. It's very important for the parents to know that they too have a voice and are sometimes silenced. And for whatever reason, they feel that they're not quote unquote worthy to speak up. So having different, committees or organizations within the school, for example, the SCC, as Lorna was mentioning, it gives them the opportunity to speak upon these different situations. and makes them become more aware. So then they'll be able to be better equipped in terms of knowing about those report cards and knowing about how to speak to the end, knowing how to basically be okay with asking questions or of their teachers, of their child's teacher. And then also in terms of special education, in terms of health and well-being, all of those different things, I believe that parents need to know about. And so I could say that for in our school there, and I made reference to the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, we saw so many different things. And so therefore, everyone had to be empowered or re-empowered again, or to be more educated or to be elevated as it relates to so many different things that changed in the realm of education. And so just in terms of mental health and well-being, there were different organizations, within the school community that were asked to come into the schools to speak to depression, anxiety, because it is real. And so perhaps maybe, the parents are seeing these things at home, but thinking that maybe it's just happening to them or don't know how to deal with it. So again, equipping them with these different tools, giving them the different techniques. Perhaps it's in the format of workshops. Perhaps it's in the format of, a weekly newsletter. Perhaps it's in the format of just being highly visible in and around the school, whether it's at the kiss and ride, whether it's before or after school, or just greeting them. And making calls when you need to make those calls, and not only necessarily when it's something quote unquote bad, but to also celebrate the successes or the areas of growth of their children. So those are some of the ways that I believe, and that there's totally more of them in terms of how we can empower the parents. It's just making them feel a part, because it's definitely a partnership. It should be a holistic thing. Idea in terms of education. And it's very important that we understand that it's not just being taught, or the students are being taught at home, but it's also the fact that it is our responsibility to serve the students, right, our staff, and to equip ourselves so that, these our students can be the best versions of themselves. So I will end
Thank,
with that.
thank you for that. So I'd like to ask you if you can also now focus on the youth. How can we empower the youth and make
Mhm.
sure that they are indeed indispensable to the education?
Most definitely. Yes, thank you so much for that question, Kathy. Empowering for the youth. I get really emotional with this because of the fact that there's so many of the youth that believe that they are not worthy of receiving, good grades, or, receiving compliments, or thinking that they can do something. And so in terms of empowering them is listening to hear. I also feel that another way of empowering the youth is giving them that platform to allow their voices to be amplified. A lot of the youth voices have been silenced for whatever reasons, and they internalize a lot of things. And so it is our duty, as administrators, as teacher educators, as parents, to ensure that this platform is there for them. And so it could be in the format of bringing the outside world into the classrooms, things that are dear to them. I mentioned beforehand in terms of mental health and well-being. So what does that look like for an intermediate student? What does that look like for a kindy? And so like the school where I'm at right now, the kindergartens are actually being taught how to mindfully listen and how to mindfully breathe. And they're doing that. And when you speak with them, they're very articulate in the sense to say that when I'm feeling a particular way, I can practice my breathing so that I can become more relaxed or calm, or to learn in a particular environment. Another way that we can empower the youth is just basically having different committees or organizations within the school, leadership teams where we're actually, again, amplifying their voices, again, listening to hear what are some of their concerns. We can empower the youth by knowing that they learn differently, just as with adults. There are multiple ways of learning. And again, it is our duty to serve them. to make sure that they're their best version, that they know that they are leaders and that each and every single one of them has gifts within themselves. It just needs to be practiced. And there comes that partnership with the empowering of the parents so that it could be done there as well too. Another way of empowering the youth is that I have also facilitated workshops at the board to, in particularly with the Durham District School Board, Empower Her conference, which is specifically for young Black females from grades 6 to 8. There are hundreds of female students that are under this one building, have the opportunity to listen to guest speakers, to tap into different resources and workshops, and helps them with their self-esteem, helps them to give them, information in terms of financial literacy, in terms of giving them information about transitioning to high school or other issues that are happening with them. Within DDSB, there's also the Cypher conference, which again is geared to Black males, again from grade 6 to 8 or grade 6 to 9, pardon me. And the same kind of thing in terms of having guest speakers that look like them, that sound like them, that have gone through maybe similar things like when they were a youth. And so that's another form of empowerment. I heard Michelle speak about in terms of the content that is being brought into the schools. Well, let's question that. Let's disrupt that. Let's have a good reflection of our diverse community of students, and have books and things that are reflective of that, or lessons that are reflective of our students. And so it could be in the format of just current events or debates teams, or just talking about different cultures. And we make reference to Black Heritage Month, but actually it is every single day. And so speaking about those different things, and not just focusing on sports, but just also in terms of mathematicians and doctors. And nothing's wrong with sports, because I ran track as well too, but just opening them up to a different piece of their world so that they can fully empower themselves with the knowledge that they're getting to become a little bit stronger and more confident in terms of who they are, where their identity is concerned. And then lastly, there's so much that I can say. I would also make sure that they are focusing on who they are. Because when we have conversations with our youth in terms of, okay, well, how would you define identity? There are many that do not know how to. And so therefore, it's very important for our youth to know who they are, to know their history, to know the importance of how other people define who they are or who they would like to be. And so that is part of their identity as well. So just really equipping them on all levels, academically, socially, and also speaking about the importance of respect, just equity, anti-racism. There are so many things that are happening and that they have questions about. And I believe that we can answer all of them under the realm of the different expectations when we look at the new expectations for language. And the reason why I did that in quotes is because of the fact that I know many teachers or teacher educators or administrators or things of that nature have been teaching to that in terms of Indigenous rights, in terms of oppression and racism and things of that nature. So that's just a snippet of empowering our youth. When they speak, that we listen and that we hear. And I think the difference of listening to hear is that whatever is being said during that platform or that discussion or in the class or on the court outside of the school, that we are actually taking note of that and implementing that into our daily routine as it relates to school.
Thank you so much, Andrea Nicole, for that.
You're welcome.
And I encourage our audience listening to continue to send in their questions. And at this time, I'm going to ask different panelists to answer some questions. And if you could keep your responses to about 2 minutes so we can get through the questions, I'd appreciate that. And I will sometimes open it up for anyone to take a go at it or direct it to a person. Sometimes the audience may ask a specific person to answer a question. And the first question is actually for Michelle. It appears that many of the gains of Black staff and students are being rolled back at school boards. Some boards have given notice to central staff, most of which are Black and racialized, and in quotation, they have last hired. What does it mean for culturally relevant pedagogy? And what does this mean for representation? And sorry, this question is for Lorna, sorry. Hello, Lorna?
I'm sorry, Kathy. I'm sorry. The question was for Michelle, or was that for me? Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, it's for you. I'll repeat it, Lorna. Sorry about that. It appears that many of the gains of Black students and staff are being rolled back at school boards. Some boards have given notice to all central staff, most of which are Black and racialized people. And in quotation, it says last hired. What does that mean for culturally relevant pedagogy? And what does this mean for representation?
Now, I'm not certain about the board's plans in terms of hiring practices, because as you know, I am no longer with the Toronto District School Board. But I would say that if we are talking about CRP and we are not opening the doors for people who actually understand CRP, people who actually have lived a life of experience in terms of how culture is relevant to them, how certain pedagogy is relevant to our students, that will be a disservice to the students. So I would say that it will certainly be a loss to our students, because we will not have the people reflected in the school who can actually best support them in terms of developing a culture, the pedagogy that's needed, and the relevance. And I've seen that all too often being dismissed in schools, in terms of let us do a particular type of curriculum and not really focus on the kids in front of us. It is essential that we as educators focus on the kids that are actually sitting in with the bums in the seat, sitting there ready for us to actually teach them, that they learn more about who they are and can develop strengths based on their the relevance of the curriculum.
Yeah, thank you for that. And we have a question from Norma Nicholson. What are 2 concrete ways parents can become indispensable in the school system? And anybody can take a go who wants to tackle that.
Hi, I believe that it was spoken to. However, in terms of becoming indispensable, is just knowing that you as parents, you do have a voice, and you can bring your concerns to whether it's the teacher, whether it's the admin, and then you can even take it to superintendents, trustees, things of that nature. So that is one way of parents that can become more empowered, so to speak, in terms of being indispensable in the school system, making sure that you know the different expectations for the curriculum. All of that is free. You can see that. Just go to Ministry of Education. If your child's like in grade 6 or 7 or whatever it may be, you can see every single thing as it relates to expectations or what is being taught, whether it's in math, language, how should I say, for health, for phys ed, for all of those different things. And if it is, a particular situation where something is happening at the school, and let's say that it involves race, maybe your child is being called derogatory words and you are not happy with how it's going, then you are entitled to have a conversation with, the teacher, with the principal, and you are able to also ask for, things to be set in place to ensure that, Not to necessarily say that this won't happen again, but to know that your child is being protected and there are consequences and people are being held accountable for these things because it's in the board mandated in terms of no racist, no sexist, and homophobic or things of that nature remarks. Another way is just knowing your rights, making yourself highly visible, joining different committees if you're able to, because that's another way of amplifying your voice through SCC. Maybe it's, just parent-teacher interviews or whatnot. Perhaps your child is doing very well. Like I know my parents always were there. I'm a parent as well too, and we were always there as well too. And I know that Lorna had mentioned something in regards to it being more easier to kind of see what your child is doing at the elementary level, but I know that we were definitely there in high school as well too, in the halls speaking with the parents, and so they knew us very well. And so when you build those relationships, then it's not to say that your child is treated differently, but there's vested interest, and so don't be afraid to speak up, to know your rights, to speak up about anything as it relates to your child's ability in the different subject areas, or again, as I said, if it's like in terms of bullying and things of that nature, your school is there to work in partnership with you.
Thank you for
May I
that.
just add something, please, Kathy? In
Sure.
terms of this is just very quickly, very essential that parents become partners with the school in terms of supporting classroom learning experiences. Parents do know, somebody mentioned there that parents are the students' first teachers. Students get homework, they get assignments, they get projects, they have exams. Parents, be collaborative with the school, help the students find out exactly what it is that needs to be done in terms of learning in the school, and see how you can support if you have the time. If not, there are programs after school that can give the student actual additional support. Thank you.
And thank you for that. And I have a question for you, Michelle. So during the George Floyd summer, there were a lot of changes in organizations, and a lot of Black people were promoted to positions of leadership. However, parents are now feeling that the Black staff are sometimes upholding the status quo. How do parents and the community deal with this perceived dilemma?
As being one of those staff, and I say I'm one of them because I work inside an institution and the education institution, and I clearly recognize that there are actually parents and caregivers and community who may perceive me as such. So the first thing I always say to parents is connect with the staff. There isn't a staff in any district that a parent and caregiver does not have access to and does not have the right to have a conversation with. And, and I'm going to connect it to the last question, because if we are becoming the problem, then we should be disrupted. I don't think any parent or caregiver who perceives us as being a part of the problem in the system should feel that they should not have the right to engage us in a way that suggests very clearly that you're presenting yourself as such, or they should also have the right to be advocating to have us removed. And I say that wholeheartedly, recognize I'm one of those staff who are in the system. And I'm one who works with parents to caregivers, and I say to them, there are various tools in our system that you have access to when you think the staff is the problem. At the front line, at the classroom level, if you think the teacher is the problem, there are tools available, right, that in Elementary Teachers Federation that you have to be able to state that. And that's no different whether you are the teacher, the vice principal, the superintendent, or me as a central programmer within education system. Do not hesitate to speak it. Do not hesitate to address it directly. But I'm also going to say, grant us some grace, because recognize that what you see may not be what is. right? What glitters may not always be gold, because recognize that we too are in a system that we are navigating as people of African descent. And sometimes the things we do are not always going to be glittering, but does not mean that behind the scenes we are not working. Does not mean that behind the scenes we're not looking or putting in place policies and procedures that are in the best interest of children and all children. It may not be visible to you immediately, but I can say that the work is being done. And sometimes we ask that you grant grace to ask questions. You look below the surface, because there's some of us who are out there rhetoricing. We speak a lot of things, but behind the scenes, the things that needs to be done, and Kathy, you know, in districts, the policies, the way they happen, the reports that come to board needs to be crafted in specific way by staff for it to move through the system. And some of us are doing that work in very quiet, silent ways and not jumping up and down. So I say to our audience, one, check in with that staff, pay attention to the work that they're doing, but don't also hesitate to disrupt and move them out if you think we're the problem.
Thank you for that. I see, Lorna, were you trying to say something?
No, sorry.
Okay, no problem. So at this time, I'd just like to read a comment from Vera Herlock. And she says, parents are the child's first teachers. Values are taught. There is in the curriculum things that are taught to our children which diametrically oppose our values, which causes a rift in the home. How is a child pregnant can go for an abortion and parents are not told? How is it okay when a child has a different name or identity known only to the school and parents are oblivious to it in the home? Why are the rights of parents taken away and put into the hands of teachers and government? Something is very wrong in our society. Children are being removed from their home, not because of child abuse, but because they are not going along with what the child is requesting. There is a role reversal here. The child is the parent and the parent is now the child. This has become a slippery slope, a domino effect. Would anybody like to comment? Michelle, you're on mute.
Thank you so much for that commentary question. And a couple things. I'm going to go back to the first thing. There's someone who writes curriculum and someone who's writing policy and procedure. And I said earlier, in order of us to be in front of it, we've got to be at the tables writing it. And in order for us to be writing it, we've got to be aware of when those calls, who those calls, or if that call ever comes out for the drafting of procedure. But also when the consultations are happening at the provincial level about what is happening in education and how it should be happening, I think it's essential that we're paying closer attention to it and responding to it. That's the first comment. The second is relating to roles, reversals, responsibilities in education. You know, one of the things we spoke about earlier was the importance of student engagement, and that we've got to recognize that our children and our students need a space where they should have a right. And at this particular point in time, I do not believe that this needs to be an either or, but I do believe we need to find a balance where our students get an opportunity to be able to speak of their experiences, where they sit, how they're feeling about themselves, their identities, their journeys, and also provide the space where our parents and caregivers have an opportunity to do the same. I cannot support any policy or procedure that pitches a child against the parent or vice versa. And so what we need to be doing within the education session is paying very close attention to that, because we cannot suppress the voice of our students. We cannot do it because we know they need a space, but neither can we exclude, isolate, or marginalize that essential adults in their lives. And the reality of this is they come as a package. Now, recognizing that this relationship looks differently in every household and every home. And one of my concerns about some of the policies that are moving forward is it's being structured from a place of parents are in the position and all parents are open to harming children. And that's a concern for me, right? Because that is not the state. But even if it is, we have a system in place in this country, province, and city that's there to do that. We have a Children Welfare Act that's there to protect the child. And so I think it's really essential that we pay attention to the institutions that we have in place and not continue to confuse them, particularly in education, where we know, and Kathy, you started this with a quote that said, in order for a child to be effectively and successful in education, it requires the engagement of the significant adult in their lives. And education has got to be sure that it doesn't begin or aim to separate that.
Thank you for that. Would any of the other panelists like to comment?
I just wanted to say that everything that Michelle had spoken about was just done so eloquently. And, you know, in terms of never wanting to have a policy that is going to go against, you know, the parents or whatnot, or to cause that kind of division, pardon me. But it's also very important to also hear those students' voices who are hurt or need a place to speak as well too. So I'm glad that you were able to speak to that, because I did see the comment. So thank you for that, Michelle.
Yeah, and thank you. And I meant to mention earlier too, I liked when you said to grant us some grace, right? And I think that's really important.
May I say that Michelle spoke so eloquently, and I agree with many of the things that were said. I do also want to add that, you know, Frederick Douglass said, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken humans. And I think we need to go forward remembering this. I'm as an administrator in the school, I see unbelievably large amounts of students who need that booster in self-esteem, need that booster in feeling coming to school and feeling well placed. And this school, as Michelle, is not always a fair place for our kids. It's not always a kind place for a kid as well. As she said, it's not always a fair place for us educators as well. So, and parents. So we as adults have to find a way of building the strength that our kids need. It's awful to say that they need resilience. It's putting the onus on them, right? And we need to take that off them. I see it. It is hard out there for our children. I go to various schools and I see our students, in spite of all the programs that set aside for to establish Black excellence, our students are not there yet. We need to build that strength. We need to make sure that we don't have to repair these broken souls. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I firmly believe that it's so important to start, because literally you have such a wonderful opportunity from birth to like 6 years to really mold and nurture children's curiosity. And a lot of harm comes to children, right? When they, you know, impressionable years, they're 4 years old, you start going to kindergarten, and they face trauma and all this negativity, and we need to build them up. And each child has a gift and talent, and I think it's incumbent on the educators to find and nurture that talent. And I think it is easier to do this when parents are partnering with the education system and being involved. And I know it goes contrary to a lot of parents, especially from different cultures. When you come here from the continent or you come from the islands, right? We had a different community approach to education there, where, you know, our teachers are invested in our children, with a big community raising our children, and it's not necessarily always the case in when we come to Turtle Island, right? So I think it's important for our parents to remember that, and don't wait to get involved in the school when there's a problem, and start that relationship building. Because I think, Michelle, you had mentioned about the importance of relationship building, and I think that's very important. And I have a question here from L. Taylor, and she says, or the person, I'm not sure if it's a he or she, why is there not more programming that is supportive to parents and the parent-child relationship, in brackets, how to have certain conversations, positive discipline, drugs, cybersecurity, close brackets, being arranged by schools with public dollars?
If I could speak to that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So in regards, and thank you for your question, L. Taylor. As it relates to positive discipline, I know that that's done on a regular basis, individually, in terms of like the teachers within their classrooms and the quote unquote rules that are there, or just, you know, the character matters assemblies that they have and focusing on a particular trait on a monthly basis or whatnot. In terms of the drugs and the cybersecurity, I know that it also depends on the educator as well too, but I know that that's grafted into the health curriculum as well. But for me, bullying is very huge on so many different levels, whether it's physical, cyber, emotional, verbal, and they know the consequences of that. So whether it's in the elementary or sorry, not the elementary, the primary, junior, or the intermediates, that was done. And so I had the opportunity of working with the intermediate students. And again, I keep on saying that platform and building the relationships and amplifying their voices. You know, we were able to have a conversation and different lessons as it relates to the drugs, the cyber security, the importance of having a positive attitude, self-control, and all of that. And they were actually writing their own scripts and then recording and then showcasing that and using that as a tool, an educational tool, where they would create different questions and as if they were to be the teacher themselves and creating these lessons for the students. So in terms of the why is there not more programming, I think that also depends on the actual schools and the admins in terms of what kind of programming they would like to bring into the schools as well too. But I know that it's happening, whether it's in the curriculum through the different expectations, and then the extra programming, again, I believe happens is a discretion of the admin. Just quickly, if I may, just because I believe that what Michelle was saying and Lorna was saying in regards to the importance of, you know, that adult figure or a figure. There is a poem that was given to me by a former colleague, and he photocopied it and gave it to everyone, and it remains with me. I just quickly want to read it. I've come to a frightening conclusion. I am the decisive element in the classroom or the school. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. And as a school leader, I possess tremendous power to make a child's life. You know, I added in their parents, the guardian's life, or staff's life in the school community, miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. And in all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated. And a child, our parents, guardians, and our staff members humanized or dehumanized. And so I just wanted to read that because everything that Michelle and Lorna was saying, I truly believe that, and that has stayed with me. That has stayed with me because you can either make or break a child. And I don't think people realize that when they come into this profession, how much quote unquote influence we have on these impressionable minds and these individuals. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I just
May
want
I
to
just
May I
add,
just quickly add to
Kathy?
that as well before we move on?
Okay. Sorry, who's
Um,
that?
Michelle,
Michelle is speaking. Yeah. And then you
I
can,
just
Lorna. Go
Okay.
ahead,
I just
Michelle.
want us to think about the education's budget. And Kathy, you sit as a trustee. What percentage of the board or district's budget that ever crossed your table that ever indicated that a percentage of that looks at parent caregiver engagement? And I'm going to bring this to everyone's attention because there's rarely And there's very limited budget allocated in a district that comes down from the ministry that looks very specifically at districts actually doing something that overall engages parents and caregivers. And I'm going to say this, that there's only one district right now across this province that has a full operating parent caregiver engagement office. There are some of the districts that had attempted it, but due to lack of funding, it doesn't exist. And I sit in a privilege role because our district continues to find the resources to make it happen. But some of these things need to be intentional. We speak of education of the time having three stakeholders. We speak of students, we speak of staff, we speak of parents and caregivers and guardians. But the reality is only two is ever funded and resourced in a wholehearted way. And so I say to our parents and caregivers who are advocates for education, that if we want to see more of our parents being nurtured in education, we want to see them assisted in journeying through education, that we've got to start advocating that the districts and that the ministry recognizes that parents, caregivers, or guardians are not just a rah-rah audience when they need to move a policy forward. They organize us, they get us riled up, and then once it moves, they forget. Right? And so we need to start demanding budgets that recognize that there are three stakeholders in education and that we have newcomer parents who need supports in navigating. We have parents who don't know how the education system works and needs to know that the system is offering supports in them doing that, right? And recognize it. Without that, it's really difficult. But I'm going to speak to all my soldiers out there, parents and caregivers who have been banging in our system for a long time and whose head is literally hurting them right now, and who's been advocating and working but feel that the system has not created a joyful place for them. I'm going to say to you that your head is pounding, but you're making a difference. It may not look that way, but the more you continue to disrupt, the more you continue to speak, the more we're seeing slight shifts in change. And you know, there's a parent in our board that comes to mind as I speak, and she challenges me when she says, "Why is it, Michelle, that the system is always expecting us to continue to give our time, give our expertise, give our knowledge, and we're never paid or compensated or acknowledged for it?" And what I'm going to say to you is, the payment is there, but you may not see it, because what happens is every time you exert and disrupt, there's a child's life you're saving, as Andre has just suggested earlier. When you continue to bang it, you're not just only speaking for yours, but you're speaking for all those children whose parents' voices have not yet or cannot be heard, or they've not found in themselves. So I just want you to know that you're seen and that you're heard, and that there are those of us behind the scenes who continue to work for you.
Thank you, Michelle. I got goosebumps as you said that. And I think it's important to recognize that we actually have to celebrate every tiny little progress that we make, because there are good things that are happening there. And that's not to be complacent and pat ourselves on the back and say, rah, rah. But I think it's very important to acknowledge. And I remember in last February, I met and I had an amazing 2-hour conversation with Martin Luther King III. And the question was raised by a group of students that were at the meeting also. And they said, how do you, and one of the persons was my son, and he says, I see my mom doing this work and I hear the frustration. How do you keep positive, right? When things seem, sometimes it appears that you make 2 steps forward and you take like 7 steps backward. And we're looking at erosion of some of the gains that were made, right? And he said, you have to make sure you celebrate every win, every little win, because it's important even for your own mental well-being, right? And it's important not to give up and keep moving forward, right? Because we're trying to do something that's hundreds of years in the making, and it's not going to happen overnight. So it's really celebrating every gain. So Lorna, would you like to add something?
Yes, actually much of what Michelle and Andre have already, said what I was wanting to say, but importantly, parenting is difficult. It is a challenge. Parent engagement in the school is also a challenge. They say we're welcome, parents are welcome, but are they really? However, You can, as a parent, take the walk into parent council meetings. You can. As a matter of fact, they are there every month in many schools. We need to see more parents in them. And there is where you can actually look at policy, ask about policy, ask about practices, and you can influence in terms of what you would like. If you have enough parents, remember, you're paying the tax dollars. You're the one who should be calling the shots. You are the boss. You can take the lead. Unfortunately, I don't think many parents know that they can go into these parent council meetings and actually do a little bit of disruption there in terms of some of the things that's going on in the school, push forward in terms of what they want to see done. Ask questions about what's being done. If there are things that you do not are not seeing in the school, here's where you can ask for skill development. You can ask for experts to come in. They are funding. As Michelle said, there's money out there. You can ask for these things to be brought in the parent council sessions. So parents, I beg that you attend these meetings. They're there for your input. They're there for you to ask for resources. Do that. Your children cannot survive this educational system without your advocacy. Be the advocate that they want you to be, because you can facilitate changes on their behalf.
Thank you so much for that, Laura. And I think also to parents, if you feel unwelcome in the school and that's a barrier to your engagement, I think you should go to the principal and speak about the fact that you do feel unwelcomed. It's very important. And come with other parents too, because I'm sure if you feel unwelcome, chances are there are other parents like you that feel unwelcome too. And with that, I'd like to encourage each panelist, if you could please leave us with a 1.5 minute nugget that you'd like parents to take away from this conversation. And do preface your comments reminding parents that they have incredible power, and there are a lot of parents are unaware of this incredible power. So I'll start with you, Lorna, if you would like to make a comment.
Yes, parents, when it comes to education, when it comes to the well-being of your children, you are on the front lines. You are there to support, and you have every right to do that. Help your child to cope with the education system, because it is a challenge for them. Really, it is. So remember, you on the front lines, you hold the key. The initial part of education actually begins with you, not always with the school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andre Nicole?
Thank you for this opportunity. A quote that came to mind when everyone was speaking is, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." And so, having said that, just know that you are very important. Your voice, your thoughts, your concerns. I would encourage you to have those courageous conversations, as you've heard, with staff, with principals, vice principals, in terms of how it relates to your child. And just know that, just continuously push for what you deserve, rightfully deserve for your child. And know that the unspoken dialogue will speak. That's it.
Thank you so much. And Michelle?
As we move through African Heritage Month, a couple of things come to mind for me. One, remember who we are. Remember who we are as people of African descent when we enter into these spaces. Remember that we are greatness, we come from greatness, and instill that in our children. So when we enter into institutions that may not be aware of who we are, that our presence will speak volumes of who we are. Secondly, there is no space in education or room or place that as a parent and caregiver, you don't have the right to access. There is no person that you don't have the right to access. And if you don't access it, it's because you've chosen not to. And I'm going to say that again. There isn't a director of education that a parent can't call. There isn't an associate director that you can't connect with. There isn't a teacher. So maximize that even when you're feeling and sensing the resistance. And I'll end with this. dismantle harmful narratives about who we are as people of African descent, create our communities in spaces where they've forgotten who we are, because they've forgotten from all things come from us and all people have come from us. So sometimes we enter spaces to reframe the narrative, and that will amplify again for our children and create spaces that bring them Black joy, Black magic, and Black peace.
Wow. What a way to end this amazing, amazing fireside chat. You know, as they say, it's funny how time flies when you're having fun. Michelle Monroe, Andre Nicole Vernon, and Lorna Lobie Cross. It was truly an honor and a privilege having a wonderful discussion with you this Sunday. I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank you to our audience, to all that are watching online, live streaming, or that signed in to the Zoom. We appreciate you and your support for 100 ABC Women. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Look how far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment.